All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 85 of the Hideout. We're sneaking up on 100 episodes here on our weekly spaces dedicated to the metaverse, blockchain gaming, and everything that's happening within. So we have a pretty interesting panel planned for you today. There's going to be some awesome guests and a bit of a focus now on today on what's happening within the Bitcoin ecosystem. And so there's some interesting things happening, and we'll tell you all about it with some awesome guests, including some familiar faces and some new faces. In celebration of that, we have posted our intro lore for our game, Legions 2029, which has a very heavy Bitcoin and feed the revolution vibe to it. So if you are interested in the Bitcoin side of things, check out the video. We may or may not be cooking up some stuff on the Bitcoin side ourselves. So that's all I can say about that for now. But very excited to have a panel here that are going to dive deep into some of this stuff with all of you. What we'll do is we will start with introductions. Everyone will give us a little bit about themselves and then, what they're building, what they've got coming up. As always, feel free, speakers, to pin anything illustrative that you'd like to the top of the spaces, any kind of videos or anything that's exemplary of what you're building or more information. We always love to have that up there to keep people informed. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nick Frontera. I am one of the founders and the CEO of Apollo Entertainment, the company behind Satoshiverse and the Legions 2029 game. For those of you that are not familiar with Satoshiverse, we have been building for roughly the last 4 years now. We began as a comic IP, partnering with legendary comic artist Jose Delbo, and we created one of the first Bitcoin superheroes. We expanded that into an entire IP with lore and all sorts of fun NFTs and comic art, and then eventually started working on our 2 avatar collections, the Legionnaires and the 8mo Army, and then began our game, Legions 2029. So if you guys take a look at the top, the pin tweet, the first pin tweet, you'll see the season 1 is now live. That'll give you a really good primer on what Legions 2029 is. But at a high level, we have about a 25-person team that had been working for the last 2.5 years on this game. It is a free-to-play, high-fidelity PC game. It's essentially part of the hack and slash genre. The combat was inspired by God of War, but then we mix in some really interesting RPG elements that were inspired by games like Diablo, all with a roguelike game loop, which we looked at games like Hades for. So if you are interested in kind of a unique genre of game that is completely blockchain enabled, all the items, all the progress, everything that you do can be completely owned through the NFTs and NFT metadata, and then traded freely, obviously, with a blockchain and Bitcoin lore. Check out the game. We'd be excited to have you in the community. But without further ado, let's jump over to our awesome panel of guests, starting with a friend and very familiar face. Trevor, glad to have you on.
Oh, can you hear me?
I hear you now. I was gonna say, I know you're getting old, but it's that big red button that says mute.
Yeah, good to be here. So I'm just running around. It's a bit chaotic, hectic right now, and a man can't do like more than 2 things at once or one thing at once. So multitasking is not my forte. But anyway, I'm here. I can hear you. All is good. Super excited to be on this panel, and I'll pass it over to your next guest.
Okay, so since Trevor is humble and didn't want to do a deep introduction, we'll do one for him. Trevor, for those of you who don't know, is one of the most iconic crypto artists in the NFT space. He's been here since before anyone knew what an NFT was. He's been doing it for a very long time and has been part of some of the most memorable drops that made this space what it is today. It's an honor to have worked with him, in several different capacities, and he is now going to be launching a project that I'm sure he will talk a lot more about on Ordinals called Crypto Angels, and we will give you guys a lot more information about that coming up. But let's jump over to Vivid Gallery. Welcome to the space. Good to have you on.
Hello. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here around such incredible guests. So thank you so much. My name is Gerard. So I also joined with my personal account. But yeah, I loved your presentation of Trevor. So I don't know if you have one for us too.
So the thing is, Trevor, I've known for a very, very long time. So if you
Of
jump in
course.
and give me the help there,
Of
I'd
course. Of
appreciate
course.
it.
I actually I have to jump in and say yeah, Nick did a much better presentation of me than
Exactly.
I would
That's why I
myself.
wanted
So
him to do
yeah, I'm gonna have very, very impressed with that, Nick. Thank you. I'm gonna have to hire you as my PR guy from now on.
Oh my God. Well, so we are, Vivid is a generative art gallery. So we only release, generative art algorithms, on Bitcoin. So we are very specialized on ordinals. We started, the beginning, we started with our collection Sats, was below 10K inscriptions. And yeah, until then we have released 8, created collections with different artists. And now we are releasing a new format that's called chef-d'œuvre. So the idea is to change a little bit the dynamic that has been for a few years on generative art, releasing 1K collection supply, 10K collection supply. Our idea is, okay, the art in generative art resides in the algorithm. So we are going to sell exclusive pieces, exclusive algorithms just in one piece. So only one collector, but in different ways. The artist can choose, how we can present that. So yeah, that's basically it. Thank you.
I love that, and it's a really interesting approach because, yeah, like you said, sometimes once you build the algorithm, the amount of art that can be generated from it is infinite. So the art, in some sense, is truly the algorithm, and I think a lot of people would love to own that piece of tech. So that's very cool, and very excited to learn more about that. Let's go over to English. How you doing? Welcome to the space.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. How you guys doing? Trevor, I think I have a piece of yours. Did you do a piece on Bitcoin with Quadrillion from BitGod?
I did not. This is actually my first
Oh, okay.
ordinals. Yeah, so
Maybe it was a
that
different.
might be Trevor
That's what it
Owen,
was. Okay.
maybe
All
another.
right. That
Yeah,
makes sense. All right.
my arch nemesis. No, he's a good guy. I like him. Trevor's a good
All
guy.
right, fair enough. Quickly, a little intro about myself. Been in Web3 for a while, specifically with ordinals. Inscribed fairly early, sub 100K. So got in there with Honey Badgers, a buddy of mine, launched that. Um, Arguably the first 10K collection, but Node Monkeys, I guess, has a different claim for it. But nonetheless, got in pretty early with that, and pretty orange pilled fairly quickly. Had worked on like community teams and leads. On the Ethereum side, so quickly started doing community work for Taproot Wizards. I work for Taproot Wizards. On the Ordinal side, I do advising. I spearheaded Oni Force's launch into Ordinals from Ethereum to Ordinals. I'm an advisor to Prometheans and the CyberKong's new PFP collection. I do community lead for Blob, which was the team that inscribed the Epic Sat, which I think is why I'm here to talk about, and generally guide that. So I do several things. I could probably, riddle off a few more, but I'm pretty well vested in ordinals for the past year. I also do a daily show, the Everything Ordinal show, which is fairly popular with the ordinals ecosystem. So that's a little bit about me.
I love it. Well, great to have you on. I was actually I was in LA for NFTLA with the Oni Force team, I think the day of or the day before the launch, and I was seeing some of the art that they did, and it was really incredible to see the progression from, some of the earliest ordinals art to what they were able to accomplish, like the level of detail with the recursive elements and the different things that they were doing. So, really, really incredible collection there. And, I'm not, I know a lot of those other collections very well known, obviously, and have done a great job establishing themselves in this young space. And yeah, it's awesome to have you here to talk a bit more about Epic and what you guys are doing with runes. So yeah, I'm gonna be a little out of my element as someone who's been in the Ethereum ecosystem for since 2017, but is still discovering a little bit what's possible on Ordinal. So I'm excited personally for this conversation, but I might talk a bit less than I usually do. So with that, let's go over to Spencer, who will take us away on the questions.
Hello, what is going on, everyone? My name is Spencer Vogel. I'm the business development manager here with Satoshiverse and Apollo Entertainment. And like I said, I will be asking the questions on the space today. Just a couple housekeeping items before we get into the questions here. So I'm going to pin a tweet to the top of the space here. This is what we're going to be using for our giveaway for the space. So every week we do a giveaway. This week we're giving away 5 Satoshi's crystals, which is our main in-game resource, basically in order, to upgrade your items and upgrade your characters within the game. Very, very important resource within the Satoshiverse. So a very exciting prize. So in order to enter that giveaway, all you have to do is repost the tweet that I just pinned to the top of the top of the space that says "We're live," and then just still be here at the end of the space when we draw our winner. So get involved in that if you have not. And then also, please give the Hideout account, the account that I'm speaking from, a follow if you haven't already, especially if you enjoy the content that we produce here. We're trying to build this account a little bit, so would really appreciate that. Getting into the format, we're going to start out with a group question. So I will call on someone to start, and then just feel free to jump into the discussion from there, kind of a group discussion question. Then we'll move into individual questions for each of you guys. And then if we have time again at the end, we'll do some more group questions once more. All right, so getting into the first question here, and maybe Vivid Gallery, maybe you guys could start us out on this one. So what do you predict will be the biggest changes to the Web3 art space in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, thank you. Thank you for the question, because I think a lot of people are wondering exactly what's going to happen with that. We have seen a lot of interesting things coming up in the last years. Generative artists exploding and becoming mainstream. We have seen a lot of people living through their art, and before Web3 that wasn't possible for a lot of people. So I think it was really cool what we have lived, but right now I think it's time to clean in a way. We always talk about the market cleaning, people that maybe are not working here anymore, that just wanted to come here to do a cash grab or whatever, that weren't interested really in revolutionizing art or the space in general. So I think we are going to continue this cleaning process. I also think we are going to reduce the supply of the collections, because it has been very, very interesting on how massive adoption through 10K collections, for example, or 1K collections welcome a lot of people, and a lot of people could offer this opportunity to collect art. But I also think that in a way it removed a little bit of value of collecting a piece of art, and because some people didn't understood exactly what they were collecting. So I think that artists are going to go with very, very slow supplies, coming back to fine art, and really selecting the collectors, maybe getting to know them, something that wasn't very possible. When you got 300, 500 collectors, it's quite hard. Of course, you have interaction through Twitter or Discord, but here, if you convince, 10, 20 collectors that are going to be the first one collecting your work every year and supporting you, I think that's going to be the next trend.
I'll add to that. I agree. I think that's a really good look. And me coming from very much the traditional art world, for example, when I was even just graduated, I didn't have much money, but I would manage to save up a couple £100 or a few £100 for a painting. I'd go to a student art exhibition or the degree art, the college degree show, year-end show, that kind of thing, and buy a painting and something I liked. And never once did I think that I'm going to resell this painting. I bought art, and the vast majority of people in the world who buy art, probably 98% of the people who could just go out, buy art at a gallery or a show, some kind of exhibition, street art, whatever, from the street, whatever. Nobody thinks that they're going to resell it and make money from it. So this space, I think, for better, for worse, it really twisted a lot of expectations of artists and of collectors. And I think that's going to settle down at some point in the future, that people are going to buy digital art because they like it, because they like the artist, and not specifically or only because they think they're going to flip it, and 10 times it in a day or a week or a year. I don't think that's a very healthy thing to do. For example, I mean, even when I just had graduated from art college in 2008, there were essentially 3 people who collected the majority of my work from my every year. I put on a solo exhibition at a commercial art gallery. I'd organize my own art gallery, and there were 3 buyers who bought my work. Most, every year they would buy 1 or 2 paintings, and it was because of them that I was able to continue working as an artist. I mean, I still had to work part-time jobs, but I could continue to pay for this expensive habit. And they never thought, I'm going, well, actually, I think one of the 2 or one of the 3 thought that he was going to potentially make some money off of reselling my work, and I'm very happy to say that he did. He made a lot of money reselling some of my paintings. But for the most part, most collectors buy art from artists because they like the art, and they can potentially build a relationship with that artist. So I think that needs to change in this space where people are just buying simply to flip and try to make a buck. Art is something more. It's human. It's deeper. It's not just a stock. And I think over the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years, that will start to find some kind of equilibrium in the space. And when people say, what do you think the future of Web3 art is going to be? I think, that's definitely one thing, but also, I also say, I have no fucking idea, because it changes so quickly that, every 3 to 6 months, there's something entirely new. So, we can all speculate, but we'll only know once we get there.
Yeah, I'll chime in a little bit. I'm in agreement as somebody that's maybe a little bit out of my element, not specializing in necessarily art specifically, but I do work with Far from Taproot Wizards, who has his own collection, and I do I don't know if advised, but I do chat with him on releases, and I kind of see what goes on in the community, and have just put a lot of thought into this in general. And it seems when you buy a piece of art in trad world in real life, a lot of the value comes from looking at the art. I own it. It's part of my decoration. If I have people over, they can have a conversation about it, if so inclined. But if not, I just enjoy it. And if I buy a piece, for $10,000, and I have it for 10 years, and I sell it because I move, or I just no longer enjoy the piece or want a different piece, I spend $3 a day, and maybe that makes a lot of sense. And so there's value in there. I don't know that people really look at their pieces as frequently online. And you could just look at any other piece, right? There's a little bit of value saying, I know I own it, but there's a different value proposition from Web3, and that's that it's instead of being product and oriented where you have a product, it's a little bit more process oriented. And so, like, you get to see like previews of what this person's working on. You're part of the community. You're part of people that enjoy that work, and I think that really suits more to what Vivid was saying: smaller collection sizes, having like 100 to 500 super fans that they don't really care. They just like you as a person. They like you as an artist, your philosophy on stuff. And they're probably, have a long time throughout their day that is predominantly internet time. It tends to work out that way. Not everybody. Some will buy some stuff and just do it, whatever, but the majority of it. And they're probably part of other communities, but they're happy to be part of that community. And in turn, the artist gets something out of it too, because out of, just selling at a gallery, you don't really have that personal connection with the person that's buying your art, and you can have chats with them and doing all that. So I don't know that like that art blocks 10,000, 1,000. We'll continue to do that. There was like this euphoric bubble that everything was going, people were speculating. I don't know, you'd make 10 ETH on an art blocks drop, all this crazy stuff. And now that we're going back into reality, does that mean that there's no value proposition? Probably not, but not from that crazy speculative stuff. So I think if, as Vivid was mentioning, I was throwing up hearts and 100s. If you cultivate a community that vibes with you specifically, they're not too worried about the price too much. I think if you give like a fair market based on, your traditional artworks, what you've done in the space previously, they're going to vibe with you, and you can grow that out, and they'll be happy to, collect pieces over time. So I think it's kind of the same thing as the in real life world. You're going to have to not just create beautiful art, but you're going to have to do other stuff. In real life, that create means building relationships with whatever galleries, collectors, all that other stuff. And so you have to do the same thing in Web3. And I think the main value comes mostly from the communication. Yeah, you collect the piece, you think it's beautiful, but having those conversations with the artist, why did you do this? What are you going to do next? How does these all work together, if at all, which they don't necessarily need to do. I know that like Far, for instance, he has these pieces, which I guess kind of works with the title of the space, or at least in terms of what you guys do. He still believes in like a metaverse concept. So he has like Flares, which is a 256 collection. I believe it might be a little bit less, might be more, but usually around there. And then that's actually like this HTML interactive experience. And he had an open edition of Buzz, 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 which were these hornets basically, and they'll interplay eventually. And he's building on something. Does that mean that it's a AAA game? No, but it's going to have some kind of immersive experience because that's what he deals with, 3D worlds and all that other stuff. And that alone is enough to excite people and have enough enjoyment, which it'd be equivalent to say, hey, listen, like the experience that I had for these 5 years that I've collected his piece, to finally see how these all work together would be equivalent to looking at my painting that's on, my desk for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, a day as I work. And it doesn't have to be more or any less than that. And I think art is part of humanity, and people will continue to collect it.
Oh, really, really great points. I don't think I disagree with anything that was said, but I will give a slightly different perspective just on kind of my view of how this all evolves, kind of coming at it from a slightly different angle. For me, even though, I worked with and have been, friends with and collected a lot of traditional artists who essentially evolved their art to include digital and really took advantage of the digital medium in the early days of the space. My belief in NFTs were that NFTs were essentially a canvas for digital creators, right? And it added kind of a technological ownability layer to digital art that wasn't possible before in kind of the conventional mediums. And so, what you had for a very long time were natively digital artists who were incredibly talented and masters of their craft and, very good at expressing themselves through their art digitally, but really with no means of, actually tangibilizing and selling that art. And so I think for me, I mean, obviously, we had the boom and all the speculation and people making money and losing money and, overnight people going from relative unknowns to superstars in the space. And that's all great. But I think what NFTs really did was it essentially created an entire new tangibility layer for digital art. And I think that we are just scratching the surface of what that's going to mean going forward. I think that we mentioned some of the things about why people collect art and kind of, the fact that maybe people aren't putting this art on their walls because it's, it's a TV usually, and it's a TV with a moving picture on it. And I think that's part of it is that, the hardware hasn't quite caught up to the, expansive capabilities of these artists. So what I envision in the next 3 to 5 years is that the hardware for experiencing digital art is going to rapidly increase, kind of as just a byproduct of a lot of the investment in AR and VR and, just displays in general. Displays are getting cheaper. The, hardware for AR is getting much more condensed so that it's, can be used for all of its retail purposes. I think as a byproduct of that, we are going to once again have art that is natively digital, that can be experienced in the physical world, that will create entirely different and potentially more enhanced emotions than looking at, a painting on a wall. I think there's always going to be a place for paintings on a wall. I think there's a certain tactile nature that goes into the creation of art that you just have to appreciate as an art lover. But I don't think that there's anything more creative about physical art than digital art. I think digital art potentially unlocks additional layers of creativity that are possible. And I think when we start talking about experiential digital art, when we're talking about VR and AR, we are going to have artists that we have never heard of who are going to blow our minds in ways that we never thought possible. And that's what I'm excited about. And I do believe that NFTs will have a role in making that art ownable, right? And I think if people's minds are blown, if the interest is there, people are going to want to own it. People are going to want that exclusivity. People are going to want the ability to say, this is mine, come experience it. Come to my house, put on these glasses and see what my house evolves into because it was created by this digital architect, right? We're going to have entirely new terms and professions, and that's going to cost money, and people are going to own that. And they're going to be able to say, hey, if you want this experience in your house, you can buy this from me, and it's an NFT. And I believe that if everything goes kind of the direction it seems to be slowly heading, that's where we'll land. I think we're going to see less and less of your kind of traditional art that could be expressed in a 2D medium, meaning, flat art without movement. And I think we're going to start to see digital kind of take on its own character and really start to push the boundaries of what art can be. Go ahead, Trevor.
How dare you, Nick? Blasphemy. Everything you said. Coming from a traditional painter. No, I agree with you 100%. And that's why I'm really excited about this space. And, talking about, it was mentioned before, the kind of community. Before, in the trad art world, as an artist, you didn't have an opportunity to create, as a painter, a community around your work. You'd paint like maybe 10, 20, 30 paintings a year maximum, and maybe sell half of them if you're lucky. So this space completely transformed the way I think about how my art is engaged with. But also the boom of 2020, 2021, 2022 and all the scams that came with it. What it did do is brought a huge amount of eyes and money. So then an enormous number of very, very, very talented artists, both from the trad world and the digital world, came in, and this became really the melting pot of creativity, really in the visual arts. I don't think anything else has exploded like this since late 1800s Paris, and that was a lot of opium and absinthe that caused all that. But this has been an amazing opportunity to really see and engage with other artists that have completely different skill sets, like me working with you and Apollo Entertainment and so many other great artists and tech, individuals like David Oxley, building a game out. I mean, never in a million years would I thought I'd do that 10 years ago or 3 years ago even. But also I agree with the immersiveness of it, that the new world of art will be much more of an interactive, immersive experience where people will be able to engage on a very kind of individual level or group level with the art around them through mixed reality. And there will be painting still, but I think that the digital movement is going to completely consume the consumers of art in the next, few years and beyond.
Yeah, if I could just add quickly to that. Yeah, I think that is kind of right. I think generally speaking, people tend to want to have pieces, you use the word digitally native. I know like on Ethereum specifically, having smart contracts and algorithms, that was really a lot of the value proposition of like these generative pieces. Just to bring it over onto the Bitcoin side, having talked with artists, Pinder Van Arman and a few others who I was trying to get over, and they were a little bit hesitant, and for good reason, because they didn't really want to just put a piece to say, hey, I have a piece on Bitcoin. Like, sure, that's a great, I think, value proposition. If you've been an artist in the space, you have a following, and to have it on, the most decentralized, completely on chain, specifically Pinder, believing on different degrees of on chainness, and it's pretty high degree of on chainness. I won't get into that. But going on to the Bitcoin side is having things that are digitally native, part of the DNA of it, and using that as like, I guess, like part of the paintbrush of it. And so like for Ethereum, it was the algorithms, that's part of it. I have these inputs. I don't know how it's going to look like. That's going to be part of the smart contract and, part of the code in there, and the code is there. And so what that looks like on the Bitcoin side is it gets into a little bit of the value proposition of the Epic Rune, is to use things that are native to the Meta protocol of Ordinals. So Ordinals are on layer 1 Bitcoin, but it takes a certain degree of social acceptance, saying, hey, we all believe in this for it to work, and that's the Meta protocol of Ordinals. And once you believe into that, then you believe that there's Satoshis are non-fungible because they're sequenced, first in, first out. Specifically in this case, it could have been any other way, but that's just the way that makes the most sense. And then so once you believe that, you can use certain rarities that are based not arbitrarily. Some of them, the one specifically like on the Rotomore rarity index, has to do with things that are intrinsic to Bitcoin itself. So you're using the Bitcoin canvas as a medium, and then you have special Satoshis, and those have to do with either the first sat of something significant on Bitcoin. So that could be a difficulty adjustment halvening, a period. It could be the halvening itself, as in the Epic one, and there's a few other ones that are quite significant. So some people will look out for special sats. Usually the narrative needs to be built in with why you're doing that. So if you were doing something, with Ninja Turtles or something, and then you could get into a pizza sat, which is a little bit different than what I explained, and I don't want to get too crazy into it. That has to do with block sats, ones that are significant culturally, which I think plays well into art as well. And so those are the pizza transactions. You can get into that. So people have played with that. There's other ways to play with actual change. So I think that's digitally native. Bitcoin is a digitally native asset. So if you're going to be on Bitcoin, you want to think of what's special about Bitcoin and how you can, as an artist, can incorporate that in a narrative that makes sense to you.
Yeah. Trevor, go ahead, Trevor.
I think this is all super, super fascinating. I'm really enjoying this, and we're probably going completely off of your your agenda. But is it okay if I just ask a quick question? And if anybody or some of you want to give me your take on it, because I brought it up at the Glasgow conference, Block Start just last weekend, and I find because of Bitcoin, and this is my first ordinals drop, and Bitcoin being a limited, very limited supply, unlike digital art and Ethereum or Solana or Tezos or whatever you want to work on, whatever chain. I thought, should there be some kind of moral responsibility to curate the content, the digital content, the art content that is being inscribed onto Satoshis, or should it just be a free for all until the whole canvas is painted up? It's like I made the analogy of, like, imagine if you had a limited number of canvas and paints in the world over a certain amount of time. Would you want just anybody and everybody just to put whatever they want on there, or would you want the Michelangelos and the Caravaggios and the Picassos to have access to more canvases? It's just a question, and I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer, but I wanted to throw that out there.
I love this question.
I have an answer if you want to hear my answer. I don't know. It's a free market, and I think that that's part of it. I don't know how many quadrillion sats. So even though there's 21 million Bitcoin, there's really almost, for practical purposes, like an infinite supply. And even some of these special Satoshis, they have there. There is also, to some degree, you can reinscribe on these sats. That gets into like these further things, like which one is going to be shown on the API of like Magic Eden, for instance. Like you as the owner of it or the creator could, I guess, lobby for yours to be there. There is a scarcity to it. I think the scarcity is more on the collector side, and just knowing what a special like material Bitcoin is, because you are inscribing on Satoshis, and Satoshis are unique as opposed to just creating this token. that, as you mentioned, just you can just create them, and that's kind of nice. And so it's a little bit more like describe, if you take the analogy of like using all the currency, and we'll just imagine that the US or whatever country is not printing anymore. And so there is a scarcity element, but I don't think that that's a main concern. Inscribing to ordinals, there was like a land rush type of thing with inscribing early, and maybe it was significant sub 1000, sub 100K. And so I think scarcity plays into the mindset of Bitcoin. And really the biggest struggle is just knowing when you're going to inscribe, because right now the sats per vbyte are pretty low. That's not always guaranteed. And so with having, 4 MB per block, and having this, you will compete, to print on there. So it's not everyone's going to do a significant piece of work. Sure, with like recursion, there's ways to make files tinier with, compression and using these recursive elements, but it's not cheap. There was a collection that FAR did fairly early and was, playing with some numbers, and it might have cost them, I'm going to mess this up, but let's just say cost $50,000 to inscribe when he first did it. And then when ordinals were pretty hot, he calculated it probably would have cost him, $500,000 to inscribe that. And so there's a scarcity in terms of just value of how much you are going to value your own work, because it's going to cost that. Talking with Risang, who does ordinals as well, and she does physicals, that's something that she really played with, because she's there thinking, hey, listen, what can I charge my customers, my community members, however you want to put it, my time in putting this plus the value of this piece. And it's something that you have to calculate in there. And it wasn't cheap for her to inscribe it. So I don't know. I guess you can wrestle with all that stuff. But my suggestion, if I was just chatting with you offline, would be just do something that's, intrinsically valuable to you. Do what you do as an artist, to market, to cultivate, a desire for that, and then just follow through with your community. I think those are just kind of these philosophical things that you might ponder, but really has minimal practical application.
Yeah, and just before Spencer yells at me and we need to move on to the next point, I do want to, kind of give a quick thought that and I know this may not be popular with all the maxis, but the Bitcoin ecosystem is evolving, whether we like it or not. There are lots of layer twos coming out that are essentially inheriting their security layer from Bitcoin, and that are going to enable, more complex, let's call it art or game projects, or a lot of stuff that won't need to live on layer one, or that the value prop may not be there to live on layer one and still kind of inherit the security layer of Bitcoin. I think for better or for worse, that is going to happen, and there's going to be tremendous opportunities for artists who want to do things there. Now, of course, that's not on Bitcoin layer one, and there's going to be a time and place for certain things to be there. But I think what English was saying, resonates with me as well, is that there's a certain intrinsic value and collectability to doing something within the ecosystem on layer one, on ordinals, in this first version of a protocol that's being inscribed directly onto sats, and which sats it's inscribed onto can matter, all these different things that kind of play into, for us, when we think about, and people, often say crypto art, right? And I think I distinguish between crypto art and NFT art, in that there's, kind of a smaller segment within the NFT art community that is focused on crypto and crypto themes and kind of the evolution of crypto, and pieces that really, push that forward and kind of stay with the ethos of the space. And then there's a lot of digital art that's being secured by NFTs, and, in my mind, in a different bucket. And I think what we're seeing, and kind of what English was speaking to, at least in my opinion, is that there is kind of this furtherance of that crypto art movement on Bitcoin. And there are creators that are embracing kind of the unique nature of sats and Bitcoin to make that part of their art. I guess the counterpoint is, I don't think that is where the majority of art will eventually live, that we say is either secured or or related to the Bitcoin network. I do think we're going to see the emergence of Bitcoin layer twos. I think that's inevitable. And just like we saw on Ethereum, when Ethereum began to get too expensive to operate, we're probably going to see quite a bit of traction with those layer twos and artists doing some really interesting things and games doing some really interesting things, all within the Bitcoin ecosystem, but not necessarily on, Bitcoin layer one.
Quickly, I know we need to move on topics, but just I think it's pertinent to this. If OpCap passes, which is a soft fork of Bitcoin itself, it's just an opcode that Satoshi Nakamoto had originally in the code and removed along with 20 other codes. Nobody really knows the reason why. I can get into some, but I won't, and of some theories. But if OpCap passes, that will essentially allow Turing complete style computing on Bitcoin itself, and you would be able to have a side chain potentially powered by some VM machine, and it would be very much on a side chain. It wouldn't look like an Ethereum L2 where you're transferring all your assets to somewhere else and bridging and getting some other token and doing all that stuff. It would be very simple, usually interface, and it would just be a quick, maybe like on your Xverse wallet, bridging by clicking one button. It shows like a watermark that it's on this side chain. You do your transactions and then you can go right back to it over there. So that's something the Taproot Wizards have been advocating for and has been getting a lot of traction. So obviously that takes a change to Bitcoin itself, but I don't really think we're that far off, based on talking to some builders that are pretty well versed on this. So a lot of things that are going to be built on Bitcoin. If that doesn't happen anytime soon, I do agree with you. There's tons of people coming from the Nashville conference, which I went to, talking to them. They're going to come up with, layer two solutions that might not be perfect in a sense, because you'll have to maybe send your assets to a multi-sig because there's no way to do it trustless on there. But if they're vetted players, we've seen that before, like such as Blast and other types of people that are doing that. So that's 100% coming. You're 100% right. And it's going to change, and it's going to change the landscape of not only art, but runes when we end up talking about that.
All right. Well, I think that's a first for us. I don't think we've ever spent 45 minutes on one question, but that was an incredible discussion. And let's move on to some individual questions here. So the first one is to Trevor. So we're all very excited about your Crypto Angels drop on Bitcoin ordinals. So I was curious, what about Bitcoin ordinals excites you compared to NFTs on other chains that you've worked with?
I was just talking about this today, that obviously being my first ordinals drop, it started out really 2.5 years ago. I started doing some sketches for a bronze cast Bitcoin angel sculpture. I did a series of 21 with these beautiful oak boxes, handcrafted. And the good thing and the bad thing about being a very slow moving traditional artist is that it gives you a lot of time to think about the artwork itself, the meaning, the significance, how you can build the story around it. The bad part is that, the space moves so quick. 2.5 years ago, it was a bull market, and lots happened since then. But here we are. But one of the good things that happened was that ordinals came into being, and the fact that this is around my crypto or my Bitcoin angel ecosystem, my angel motif, that within that time I was able to go like, okay, actually now I have an opportunity to bring the Bitcoin angel to the chain that was always meant to be on. That I can bring the Bitcoin angel to the Bitcoin blockchain instead of just inscribing all the Bitcoin Angel open editions from 2021. I can actually build on the universe of the Bitcoin Angel. So that's what I'm really excited about. And it's been a learning process. I've been working with Ordinals Bot massively. They've been very, very good at answering a lot of questions and helped me kind of make this make sense to me. I'm not a techie guy. I'm not a coder. I have some friends like David Oxley there who worked on the video game for me. We worked on it together to kind of create this Crypto Angels video game, Dante's Pixel Inferno. It's just, for me, and I was saying earlier on today that as an artist, I'm an art maxi. I'm not a Bitcoin maxi. I'm not an ETH maxi. I'm not this or that. I just want to experiment with the tools that I have at my disposal. And Ordinals has brought about another more canvas, more tools to play with, and then to figure out how it's all going to fit together within this universe I'm building with the Bitcoin Angel motif and the Crypto Angels. So I'm just excited to continue to see where it goes. And, a lot of what English was saying goes completely over the top of my head, but I get the basic idea of it. And all I see is just amazing opportunities to be creative, to build some really, really cool things and be, creative in a way that we've never been able to do with canvas and paint before. So yeah, that's hopefully I answered your question.
You did. Thank you very much, Trevor. Moving on to Gerard. So we've talked a little bit about this, but generative art obviously gained massive popularity and kind of came into the public eye during the PFP boom in 2021. So I was curious your thoughts on kind of how generative art has progressed since then, and then where do you see things heading in the future?
Well, thank you. So maybe it's my opportunity to go deeper into the previous conversation. But yeah, as I said, I think that the main thing is going to reduce supply and create not only the art, but the collectors. So that means that projects, whether individual artists or with galleries or other art related projects, have a responsibility in giving the buyers opportunity to real collectors. So we already talked about that. People that really enjoy their art, and treat it as something special, because it is something special. Imagine you have been working on a project for, 2 years. You want that to be in good hands. You don't want to give that to someone that will treat it as a potato, that there are tons of things that you can trade, whether on chain or, or outside. So please, use art, as something important and respect the artist's work. So I think that's going to be the next step. And maybe I can illustrate why also we are going to follow this trend, or at least the trend that I think is going to happen with our new format. So it's called chef d'oeuvre. And the idea is to really go the opposite direction. Okay. 10K collections are amazing. And we did one. We did Flora Forms with Heart, amazing artist, amazing project in collaboration with the Belvedere. It's great because it opens the doors to a lot of people that maybe they never got the opportunity to be interested in art. This allowed a lot of people to be interested in art. And I think that was the best thing of the PFP boom in 2021, that a lot of people understood that, oh my God, okay, this is also art and I can enjoy that. That's cool. That's great. We have seen a lot of amazing artists, just become famous thanks to that. So that's the best part of it. But right now, if we want to come back to something more realistic, as we said, okay, let's change that. And that's the idea of this whole format, selling one algorithm. Because in generative art, it's more special. Of course, it's different in other types of digital art. But in generative art, as I said, the art resides in the algorithm, because you can generate 100 pieces or 10K pieces. That doesn't mean that you have created 10K pieces of art. As Trevor said, traditional artist maybe is going to paint 30 pieces a year. If you create a 10K, 100K collection, that doesn't mean that you have done the work of, centuries and centuries, you have just released one work that you have divided in a lot of pieces. So I think that the moment right now is that people understand that, and that really understand how generative art works. So that's the whole idea of this new format. Release algorithm, and it's like selling the algorithm. The collector can do whatever he wants with. So it's showing a different, different perspective. So I think that's where we are going to head to. I even think that where we need to go, because as we said, if we continue like this and we just let people trading art is like trading potatoes, there's not going to be more collectors anymore, and artists are not going to be supported anymore, and they are going to stop creating, and maybe they are going to come back to McDonald's, So I think this is a necessity. People need to understand why artists do this, why collectors do this, and why the galleries or the projects like Vivid are doing this. And everyone has his part of responsibility. So I think that everyone now is starting to understand, and we have seen that on ordinals, and more at the beginning. Of course, right now we are in a very different phase where we push the protocol too much and the market, we go all hype. But no, right? I think that we are going to come back to more realistic visions. And it comes to with the nature of Bitcoin. We were talking about, is there a kind of responsibility of what you are inscribed on Bitcoin? As English said, I 100% agree with him. It's not a responsibility in terms of supply, because it can be, there are other solutions, but more in terms of how do you want to be remembered. We have this digital monolith, as a lot of people say, that you can inscribe whatever you want in. And you never know, maybe 200 years from now, or 10k years from now, people are going to look back to that. And do you really want to be remembered as someone that inscribed shit stuff on something that's unique and that's special? Or do you want to be remembered as someone that, okay, I really cared about what I was doing here, because this is inscribed in marble. Nobody can change that. So I think that's where the responsibility comes in. And when people are going to understand that, I think people are going to be more caution treat that with more caution, and inscribe better stuff on the blockchain. So I'm really grateful that Ordinals protocol exists now, because I think that's going to help a lot.
Yeah, Trevor, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just on that, I was talking to Brufstar from Ordinalsbot in Glasgow at the Blockstart conference the other day, and I was talking exactly about that. And he said, surprisingly, to his surprise, there isn't. I mean, there's some crap, but there's, he said he was surprised that like people apparently seem to, they feel some type of moral responsibility. Although he did say, he goes, I did find one dick pic, and so there's one dick pic on there, but other than that, everything else is actually to a decent level of moral expectations, I guess, and experimentation with creative ideas and art. So, but there's always one.
Dick
To be
pics are
fair,
bullish, just so you know. So there's like time to penis is kind of a thing, how long before like a penis shows up on like whatever, like a message board or whatever that's internet based. And that was actually the theory behind Rindell. Casey came up with inscription number 0, and he's like, well, if this is going to be an important protocol, like this can't go 24 hours without a penis on there. And he inscribed a crypto dick butt as inscription number 1, actually before the protocol went live. He's a base dev, and he just changed some stuff in the code real quick that prevented it from going live in a week. And he was the first to inscribe. So whenever you find a penis very early on, it's a good omen, my friend.
Well, the humanity will be remembered with that. No, but maybe some of you know this thing that we sent in space. It's called Voyager. So we sent basically a ship or whatever with some pieces of music, that thing that represent well the humanity, some pictures, whatever, just in case some aliens find it and say, okay, there is life, and it looks like this. And I see Bitcoin a little bit in that way. We never know what can happen, but if we treat Bitcoin as what we all think here it is, a very important thing that will stay forever, and we will die, but Bitcoin will stay here. At least that's what we are fighting for. Well, I think that there is a moral responsibility. Not you can inscribe whatever you want, but just think about it before. I think it's great to have dick on some ordinals, but maybe take it with some effort. Okay, I'm inscribing, so I'm gonna check what are the rules, or what can I do with the ordinal protocol. At the end of the day, it's just a question of being curious and do the thing with enough information so you can do it consciously.
Awesome. All right, well, we're going to move on to our final individual question here, and then we'll wrap up the space. So English, can you kind of explain why you think runes are such a significant innovation on Bitcoin, and then maybe also kind of what the significance of the Epic stat is and what you guys are doing over at Epic?
Yeah, sure. Let me just start off with maybe a little how runes came into play, and I think that might provide a little bit of context to it. So, really, it had to do with could we have a fungible token on Bitcoin? And before the Ordinals protocol, the answer was no. And um, basically we were able to have inscriptions, JPEGs, artwork, and all this great stuff. And Domo came and said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to use the Ordinals protocol, and I'm going to create this theoretical framework for it. And I don't know if it even has value, and I just want to see if it can be done. And this is kind of one of the value propositions of being in Ordinals now. There's a lot of like, um, you know, this proof of concept type work, trying to build out the protocol, trying to push out the tech. A lot of the things that were really exciting about Ethereum on the early days, whether 2017, 2021, however far you want to go back, and but that was based on actually creating a JSON file as an ordinal. And to give a quick analogy, it kind of worked like a loot box where, sure, you could divide it in a very fungible way. So if you had 10,000 of them, you could divide them into, five boxes of 2,000. But every time you did, you created a new JSON file, essentially a new inscription. And this was very cumbersome, both for the Bitcoin network and for the end user who had to, even if they just tried to change the price when they were trying to sell it, they had to create destroy that took confirmation blocks, that took transaction fees, and really it took a lot of the joy of trading this from a speculative standpoint out of the way. And so people thought, okay, well, this seems to get adopted because Ordi was a hit. And a couple of other ones, and there was kind of this fun type of thing that happens with meme coins. So after that, there was people that came up with new protocols, UTXO based, and so this is the main distinction that's important here is that, hey, this is a separate meta protocol. So if ordinals ever just decided to go away, people didn't believe in ordinals, whatever the case may be, the ordinals meta protocol had nothing to do with this. But we're going to do this a different way. And here's the problem when you have new tech, whether it's good, bad, but it's new. It needs adoption. Everybody, Ordinals was a hit, and it didn't have that problem. People just adopted it. And so people came up with solutions that maybe weren't as elegant or maybe too elegant, whatever the case may be, but they were solutions for essentially fungible tokens. And it didn't have the adoption. So to give an analogy, somebody comes up with a new L2, a new L1. I don't know, you could use Monad or whatever is coming out. But if it doesn't really touch on the cultural level, the tech doesn't really matter. What do you're going to have a layer one that has, 50 engineers playing with it. Like, no, you need consumers, you need speculators, whatever you need on there. But you need, you know, people to actually use the infrastructure. You need cars on the road, not just the roads. And so none of these ever really took off. So Casey looked at this and said, "Hey, listen, like I'm going to come up with a protocol that if you guys want to speculate on BRC20s, which is what Domo came up with, and you think that this is fun, I'm going to use a UTXO model. I'm going to give my stamp of approval, which will, in essence, really just made everybody accept it and people excited about it. And I'm going to make it so simple, which was one of the value propositions for BRC20s as well, where it's going to be very easy for Xverse, for Magic Eden, whatever these people use these crypto products so people can interact with it, very easy to adopt. And so really that took care of another problem. So really there's like three stages of fungible tokens and why runes are important. So the first one was just getting adoption. So the adoption was there. And it's like, great, we have adoption, but the protocol technically really sucks, both from just making things very congested on the network, and it's not really friendly for users and end users. So step two, we can fix that. It's not really a problem for end users, but it's a problem. It's a problem because we don't have adoption, and no crypto products are adopting this. Step three basically resolves the first and the second and has both of those intact. So you have now fungible tokens, and you have everyone adopted it in a way that's actually in a very elegant solution, and you can buy and sell in them. So now we're at a point where we probably need another type of solution, and as Satoshi over here, Satoshiverse alluded to, will have these L2 solutions, and this will have this AMM liquidity pools type solutions, which really make interacting with this. So why is runes important? I don't know that it is. Casey made it so it's just made for meme coins. And really that's just another way of saying these have no inherent value outside of the value that you give to it, which is not a bad value proposition. I mean, baseball cards have the same thing. I mean, it has a very Lindy effect for existing for many years, and baseball being part of American, Americana culture. So there's things grounding it, but essentially it's kind of the same thing. We only value it because it has value. So that's why ordinals were invented. I'm sorry, runes were invented. Now, could this later be used in other ways? Sure. Like I think, people are like, well, this has no value. So why do we care? And I think as Satoshi first alluded to, a lot of things initially, like the internet, really didn't have much going for it. It did have to have like these vice purposes for it. So the internet was mainly used for porn. I'll dox my age. I'm 43. I remember, building up to it. I remember just AOL and maybe some bad communication and a lot of bad porn that took a long time to download, but people used it. And I think that's what we have for crypto now. And our internet porn for the first 10 years is basically crypto gambling. And so that's what it's used for. But later that will be used for tokenized real world assets. That will be used, for other types of things, whether that's DeFi, especially with these L2 solutions and other stuff. So it's really important to have, it's kind of like a chicken and egg thing. We don't have builders making products if there's not the tools to make it. And then we make a bunch of tools, but we need people to use it. And I think it just takes a lot of time to find product market fit, like the internet. It took the advent of mobile phones and having that to like actually have apps. I remember having an iPhone initially and it had no apps on there. Like literally there was no apps on there except for a few things. And you could text your friends and you could do that on your BlackBerry. And then eventually there was apps. And then with the GPS came, Uber and then, social media. So I guess that's that. So, and now all of a sudden you have this, this bubbling ecosystem of people getting online and living their lives online. But that just with low bandwidth and no apps and no mobile phones, that really just didn't exist. And I think that's where we are right now. So really the main important part about runes is that on layer one Bitcoin, we have now fungible tokens. What we do with it, I think remains to be seen. And I think it's pretty hard to predict. But I think the fact that we have people speculating on them, the way that they speculate on like meme coins on Solana or Ethereum or whatever other chain, I think that's a good use because people will get used to using them. There'll be builders making products for that specific use case with those better tools. People will find product market fit. And as that progresses, I think the value proposition of having basically these tokens and having these internal, for lack of a better word, just a circular economy on Bitcoin, and you don't necessarily have to use, Bitcoin itself, Satoshis, even though they're based on Satoshis. I think it'll be interesting to see. So the same way that if you believe tokens are important on the Ethereum network, now we're one step closer. I don't think we're quite there yet, but we're one step closer. And I know I've been a little bit long-winded. That happy to get into the value proposition of Epic if you want.
Awesome. I think we are at the end of it. Nick, I'll let you kind of take the call on this if you want to keep chatting, but we are going a little bit over time here.
Yeah, no, I think it's if you could
Yeah,
give
no
us,
worries on
I'm
my end. I
interested.
don't need to get into it. Happy just to chime in with what I did.
Well, why don't you give us the quick, the quick version of how Epic it kind of fits within the ecosystem? Because I definitely don't want to cut us short because we all went long. And then if any of the speakers do need to jump off, feel free, and that's totally fine. But yeah, give us the quick version because we definitely want to hear.
Sorry, I have to keep going back up and down because I can't hear one person or another every time I come back up. Yeah, just quickly. So just going back to the speculative nature, we just wanted to do something that was special to Bitcoin. So, the different value propositions, I really look at like one of three things you could have done on the early days. And one of them was probably to inscribe on the halvening block itself and be early. And a lot of pre-runes did that. And I think that that's kind of interesting from a cultural level. The other approach would be to say, hey, listen, we're going to do something very grassroots. we're going to build a community. We're going to build it around a meme that we think is funny and people will resonate with. You see that on Solana and Ethereum quite a bit. And then there really is like this weird niche of just kind of like a cultural coin that's not really a meme, but it is part and indicative of Bitcoin itself. And with Epic, what we wanted to do was we knew that there was going to be people searching for the first sat that was ever created on that Happening block. So although it wasn't inscribed when that block came, there's only one sat that's very special. And it's very special to not just because of the rarity of it. And I can't tell you off the top of my head. I think there's 4 that exist and maybe 8 that will ever exist on Bitcoin. Don't quote me on that, but it's something like that. And basically, this one is very special because the Runes protocol itself went live on this particular halvening block. So this is the Epic, which is the first of every halvening block. So it happens every 4 years. So maybe that 8 years is not quite right, but nonetheless, that is a special one because it's the first Satoshi that could have ever had a rune on it. And so that was secured. There was some nice artwork done. It wasn't just some crap artwork. I won't get too much into that. And so it was just kind of an interesting experiment saying, hey, listen, we want to do something that's culturally significant to Bitcoin, something more like an artist approach. We got an artist that had a popular collection on ordinals. He did the blobs along with his dev, Eloc, which outside of the ordinal maintainers is the #1 contributor to the ordinals protocol. That's Eloc. And then we tried to build a community out of it. So it was just a different approach to adding value in a very highly speculative environment.
All right. Well, thank you. That's a great overview. And, it's always great to kind of hear insights on some of this new tech from, people who are deep in it. And, I've probably been a little critical of meme coins in the past, but I definitely agree that, the idea of having fungible tokens on the Bitcoin layer 1 and potentially on layer 2s that are compatible with the protocol or side chains is going to be fundamental if we want to use Bitcoin in that way. And so I think, anything that drives interest is going to also drive infrastructure, like you said. And I think it's critical that infrastructure continues to get built. So a lot of great points there. Really appreciate the insight. We are at the end of the spaces. So what I'll do is I'll kick it over to Spencer to announce our giveaway winner, and then we'll start wrapping things up.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. So today, the winner of 5 Satoshi's crystals is Victor Fun. Congratulations, victorfun.eth or at victorfun7. If you do not already have a Satoshiverse account, please go to game.legions2029.com, create a free account, and then send Satoshiverse a DM, and we'll make sure to drop you, send a DM with your Satoshiverse username, and we'll make sure to drop those crystals into your account. And Nick, I'll pass it back to you to close out.
Definitely, and congrats to Victor Fun. Not only do I know for a fact he has a Satoshiverse and Legions 2029 account, he is definitely one of our top competitors in the game, and him and Fitzy go back to back every cycle for the championship. So really glad that you took that one home. Trevor, I see your hand is up. If you want to jump in first before I close it out, jump in.
All right, I'll make this very quick because I'm running over time as well. I gotta run home. But of course, I need to shill my Crypto Angels drop tomorrow. Ordinals drop tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. here in the UK. But yeah, it's I've been working on this for 2.5 years. Working on the whole collection for about 7 months now. This particular collection, it's quite a complex, multi-layered, multi-level project. So I've probably got way too much information on my website, but if you want to find out about it, go to trevorjonesart.com. But yeah, Ordinals bought tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. There's been a lot of excitement and interest in this. Fingers crossed. I couldn't have picked a worse time to drop, but you know what? YOLO. You only live once, and I'm feeling confident. So hopefully You'll all have a quick look at it, and I think there's so much information there around this whole, like, this project, 2.5 year project, that it's going to take some time for it all to all the layers to unravel and people to really understand how it all plays out. But I'm looking forward to the process, and we will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Thanks again, Nick, and everybody else really nice to get to know the rest of you guys on the panel. Wishing you all the best, and let's stay in touch. And thanks to all the listeners as well. I see my wife Violet there, and she's yelling at me to come home because dinner is ready.
Well, one person you don't want to make mad is Violet. So I definitely appreciate you being on here. Thank you for joining. And yes, everybody, please do check out that Ordinals shop tomorrow. I will definitely be there. I think it's an incredible collection, and it's really going to be a very cool contribution to the Ordinals project, and just generally, I think, to the space. We've got some art that, I can testify to how hard Trevor and his team have worked on this. So very, very excited for that collection. We'll do a quick outro ourselves, and then if any of the other speakers would like to also sign off, that is fine. We definitely want to know, how to find you, how to follow along. But for those of you, again, just real quick, if you weren't here in the beginning, if you have not been following Satoshiverse, please check out our socials. You'll find all the information there. We have our game, Legions 2029, which is a free-to-play PC game that we've been building for the last 2.5 years. Very Bitcoin themed and a lot of crazy lore that goes into it. I think it'll really resonate with this crowd. So check it out. It's free to play. All the details are in the pinned tweet at the top of the spaces and on our profile. But yeah, thank you all so much for being here, for taking the time. Vivid, if you'd like to say a few words before we sign out, feel free. And then I'm going to wait about 30 seconds for the delay and close the space.
Of course. Well, first, thank you so much for the invitation. We have very interesting conversations today, so I think that everyone should follow all the speakers to go deeper in that topics. Very, very, very great conversations. Well, I'm going to share too. Tomorrow we'll release this first chef-d'oeuvre that we call. So it's this new dynamic of collecting generative art. So basically, we are auctioning this whole algorithm tomorrow. It's going to be this first of this format, but after that, we are going to try to launch a new one every 2 weeks. So it's a very cool opportunity to discover a new artist, discover a new artwork, a generative art code. So if you are interested, just follow us, and tomorrow we will start that on Magic Eden. Thank you so much, guys. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. Everybody, we will see you next week.